This is Shonali Sen from I Run for Ultra, your source of all news, insights, and inspirations in the ultra long distance running world. And today, I'm super stoked to introduce our amazing guest, Camille Herron. 36-year-old Camille was born in Oklahoma and has been an athlete most of her life. She has had a long relationship with running, first discovering her love for the sport in 7th grade. This love has led to an amazing career in running. From track, cross-country, marathons to ultras, Camille has been collecting wins and breaking records along the way. This 3-time Olympic marathon trials qualifier, 21-time marathon winner, multiple record holder is just getting started. She was recently crowned the overall winner of Desert Solstice 24-hour race where she ran 162.9 miles, setting the women's world record for running 100 miles on track. Now listen to Camille talk to I Run for Ultra about her career, life, challenges, and inspirations. Well, hello Camille. Thank you for talking to I Run for Ultra. You have just set many milestones for women and also set world records with your recent 24-hour, 162.9 mile 24-hour run at the Desert Solstice. How are you feeling right now?
Well, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I'm doing better today. So I guess it's Friday and I've had a couple days to let my jello legs and brain recover. So yeah, I'm doing pretty well today. Thank you.
So let's talk a little more about that since you just mentioned that it's been a couple of days. First of all, of course, after you complete, once you completed your 24 hours of grueling running, talk us through the state of mind that you had then and to reach this point right now. What have you gone through? What's the process been like?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the recovery, I've never run a 24-hour event before. So I mean, I had to anticipate that I was going to be tired, being a bit sleep deprived and running through the night. I guess I've just been really tired this week. It's kind of been like my brain hasn't been all there and just trying to concentrate, doing all these interviews I've had to do. But yeah, I saw my PT a couple days ago and she worked on me a bit and my legs, I'm moving pretty well, like getting out of bed and, just I've been hibernating a little bit inside because I haven't been running for a few days, but I'm starting to get to the point where, okay, I think I could get back running eventually, but yeah, I'm not quite there yet, so.
And what are you treating yourself to right now?
What am I treating myself to? Great question. I've been sharing pictures of all the food I've been eating on Instagram. So, yeah, I mean, we went to eat at our favorite steakhouse when we got back, and so I had a really good steak on Monday, and I've had good hamburgers, and just eating good wholesome, like baked chicken and potatoes and rice and black beans. But yeah, I mean, I love sweets. Like I've had like a couple like ice cream Snickers bars and ice cream, and my husband went and got some sweet potato pie, and so yeah, we're just been trying to pound all the calories I can.
Well, all of that sounds good. It doesn't seem like your cheating also doesn't sound all that much like cheating. So that sounds really good. But
Yeah.
you talked a little bit about, I mean, and that's the thing, right? Like with a sport like this, people always assume the physical aspect of it, and but you yourself said, there's this physical aspect, and then there's the brain aspect. How's your
Yes.
how do you process things in your head? After the run,
Yeah.
and we'll talk before the run in a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's hard to wrap my head around like what I just did because I mean, it almost feels like it was a dream. Like, later in the race, I was literally running through sleep deprivation, and I still feel like I'm a little bit sleep deprived after the race, just trying to recover my mind. And I laugh because I think it was like Tuesday was one of my first days I started doing interviews, and I literally had to write my thoughts down on paper just to remember all the things that I experienced during the race and I wanted to talk about. So now I'm at the point where I don't have to write things down to remember. I can pretty much process what I went through, and I'm getting more mental clarity just thinking about what I experienced. So.
Well, that sounds like the type of person you are in general. Like you like to be prepared, you prepare
Yeah.
yourself, and then you kill it when it comes down to it. So let's talk about that preparation a little bit. Talk to us about your training because I know you have a background in, you've been an athlete all your life. So training comes like second nature to you also because of your family. People are in sports and have always been
Yeah.
so. So talk to us about what training for Camille is like.
Yeah, I laugh because I don't if you guys made a movie about me, I don't think people would believe it. I mean I run at all times of day and I do a lot of nighttime running and I've kind of been running a lot at nights going back to grad school over 10 years ago. But yeah, I mean I run at all times of day. I run twice a day every day. I've averaged over 100 miles per week for 12 years. So I spend a lot of time running every day. I'm 16 to 20 miles a day is pretty typical. Um, but yeah, like leading up to, running my first 24-hour race, I mean, it's kind of been trial and error over time that I found that I really just prefer to train more like a marathoner. So I'm keeping in touch with my leg speed. I'm doing a lot of speed work and just very balanced training. I don't do back to back long runs, which I know is a common method for ultra runners. My long runs are about 18 to 22 miles. So, leading up to Desert Solstice, my longest run was like 20.5 miles, which people would probably have a hard time to wrap their heads around thinking, well, how does she run 162 miles off a long run of 20 miles? But I think it's an accumulation of all the mileage I've done for so long has made my legs strong. And yeah, it's just the ability to be consistent and be healthy and to take that whole volume that you've put in to propel you for that distance. So.
That makes a lot of sense, and like obviously you made it very clear that you're not the very typical ultra runner, and you have the background in marathon and like athletic life before that. But
Yeah.
also one of the things that I want to touch upon, especially because you mentioned it, how much of it is nature versus nurture. There's one aspect of it that you're obviously you have to be physiologically born with certain genetics,
Yes.
but then the other aspect of it is finding what kind of training and what works for you. So talk to us a little about that. What is the nature versus nurture role in this, in your equation?
Absolutely. Funny enough, like I actually wrote a essay for a website recently that is going to be released really soon, and I actually talked about that and nature versus nurture question because I mean I do feel like I have genetic attributes that make me wired for ultra running. I mean I think I have some sort of crazy pain tolerance. I mean I've had stress fractures when I was a young athlete, and I didn't even know my bones were broken because I didn't perceive the pain as that big of a deal. And I think I actually got the genetics from my mom because my mom has been through some crazy things too, and my brother probably got the genetics, and I got it. So I have some sort of crazy pain tolerance and ability to be resilient. And then also the endurance aspect. I mean, I think I'm probably a pretty much a slow twitch person that I'm a good fat metabolizer and it just seems like the longer I go, the more I'm in my element. So yeah, I'm finding out, the further I go, it's like, oh wow, this feels like I meant to do this, it's pretty cool. But going back to the nurture question, I've had so many experiences in my life that it would blow people's minds, and I feel like I've gained mental strength from those experiences, and I feel like I'm a mentally very, very tough individual, and, when I'm on pace to break the 12-hour world record or something, I mean, I start flashing back to when I was a seven-year-old in my driveway, pushing myself until I would black out, and, like, I mean, how many other seven-year-olds would play sports until they're blacking out? And that's what I thought I had to do.
Not that many adults do that, so.
Not that many adults, and so I feel like, looking back on my childhood, I mean, I literally almost drowned when I was 3, and it was because I was
Oh yes, because you jumped into the deep end, or you fell into the deep end without fear. I remember I heard that interview of yours. Yes, please do talk about that.
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of I feel sorry for my parents because I defied death several times when I was a kid. I like I talked about, I almost drowned, and it was just because I was peering into a pool and I was curious how deep it was, and I just fell in, and I couldn't even swim, and I like sunk to the bottom and looked up and saw my mom diving in to get me. That's one situation. Another situation, I was standing by a stove while my mom was cooking, and I remember I could feel the heat coming off the stove, and I reached up to touch it because I was curious of how hot it was, and I burned my hand.
Wow.
Like,
So in Camille's world, the pain cave doesn't exist, and you know no fear. That's what it sounds like.
that's pretty much it. Like, I mean, the whole nurture thing. I mean, I've had so many death-defying moments in my life and weird things that, I mean, I just have no fear and I have no pain tolerance, and yeah, it's weird.
And talk to us about your running form, because running form, I mean,
Yeah.
there is of course what people prescribe as the right running form, but at the end of the day one has to find what works for them. Talk to us about how you have developed your running form and
Yeah,
how it works for you, because it works really well, Camille.
yeah, it definitely works well. I was actually born with my right femur is twisted inwards. And so it must have been a developmental thing. It's actually like my right arm and my right leg. So I kind of have a bit of a kink to my right side of my body. And I didn't know, like, all this until I actually had a hernia back in 2010, and they had to do a bunch of imaging on my hip, and the radiologist commented, he's like, "Oh, you have an anteverted femur on your right side." And, I mean, it had made sense because I always had to splay my right foot out to get my right knee to be aligned forward. So I knew I had a funky twisted right leg, but I finally, figured out why. And so I had to develop a gait where to adapt. I'm basically like a misaligned car when I run. And so I think, like, if I had to describe how I run, I lift off the ground rather than push. And so I'm kinda like a spider or like a bird or something, that I'm really, really light on my feet, so I'm not really putting a lot of force and effort into the ground, so it looks really goofy when I run, but I just don't break down, like, I don't get tired. It's kinda amazing, the further I go, the better I do, it seems, so.
So you literally fly as much as you can, as little time on the ground as possible.
Yeah, I mean, even looking at pictures, like, my feet are rarely ever on the ground. It's like I'm floating on the ground. Yeah, it's weird.
and and obviously women in this sport of long distance running, it's one of the few sports that is actually better suited for us because of the way we physiologically break down fat and how we use fat, and we don't depend on carbs. So that definitely, and athletes like you are proving that women can do well. So talk to me a little bit about how you feel about being such a beacon of, you know, adoration for so many people, and also to be able to be in a position to influence future women athletes and your role, the role that you're going to have to take on for that.
That's a good question. I mean, I kind of feel like Ann Trayson was really a huge pioneer like a long time ago, and she I want to say that she created almost like a glass ceiling. And it's taken 20 to 30 years for women to start to shatter that glass ceiling and open us up to, going even higher. And so it's not only me. I mean, there's several women in the sport now that we're just going faster and longer, and we're beating the men.
They're giving the men a run for their money.
And it's exciting now that I mean, I felt like going 24 hours was a real like pivotal moment for me because now it's like okay, I can do 24 hours, and what if I go 48 hours? What if I go 6 days? And so I just want to give more women um the the opportunity to say, hey, we shouldn't just be going 100 miles. We can go further, and we can beat the men. And yeah, so it's cool to be creating recognition for more women, ushering in more women to do 24 hours, and that cool things can kind of happen when you go that far. So.
Of course. And of course, we can't not talk about Courtney DeWalt because she's another such a big name in, long distance running now. And, you guys have a lot of things going in parallel trajectory and also very different. Could you talk to us a little bit about the similarities and the differences?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I'm coming from a very strong marathoning background, and I mean, I've had a lot of international success from 50 miles to, or actually 50K to 100 miles, and I consider myself a championship type runner. I'm somebody that elevates my game, when I'm competing at comrades or a world championship. And so yeah, I mean, for me I've definitely been inspired watching Courtney, do these 24-hour and 200-mile events. And, it's really piqued my interest to go further than I've been going, and just see what's possible. So I think it's good for the sport for, more women to be doing these longer events. And, we'll usher in to see even more women do it. So I think it's a good thing for the sport, what we're both doing. And I mean, I'd love to see Courtney step down and, try to do like comrades or the 100K world championship. But yeah, I mean, it's great that we're crossing over. There's been such a focus on trail running in the United States, and now we're starting to see more attention to road running. Me winning comrades was a huge moment because that hadn't happened in 20 years. And then seeing what Caitlin Nagy and Courtney Dauwalter did for 24 hours. Now people are realizing, oh, this is kind of exciting, to have like Jamil Corey is basically televising it on the computer. And yeah, people are like following along, and they realize like there's a lot of drama unfolding. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so I think it's just really cool that to have crossover athletes like us. And I'm going over probably a longer range than Courtney is. I think she's been going further than me. But yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that our sport is so diverse, and that it's not just trail running, that there's other things happening, with the on the track or on the roads. And it's cool. It's just really cool to see that greater attention to the totality of the sport.
And it's there's definitely women like you, like I said, you're carving the path for future generations. And I have to, it just came to my mind when you were talking about having fractures and not even realizing it. It's very reminiscent of Misty Copeland, the the prima ballerina, the first African American
Oh,
prima ballerina who did
uh-huh.
her first performance with with many stress fractures, and
Wow.
so there's definitely a way that I feel like it takes a certain type of person to make it big, and show other people how it can be done. And and you you also talk about the future of the sport and where it's headed, and hopefully seeing it in the Olympics.
Absolutely.
Talk to us about that vision of yours, and how do you see it culminating?
Yeah, great question. I've been involved with the USATF for 6 years. So I mean, I've been on the leadership side of the sport for long before I got into ultra running. And for me as an athlete, I think it's great what I'm doing and raising the bar for the sport. But my ultimate goal would be to elevate the sport even higher and to try and get us into the Olympics. And so, I mean, I was just at the USATF meeting a few weeks ago, and our new IF representative, Willie Banks, I talked to him because he's based in Carlsbad, California, and the LA Olympics are happening in 2028. So I tried to plant the seed with him that hey, we need to get a mountain ultra trail event in the Olympics. And seeing what happened with all the video coverage, like what Jamil did this past weekend, I mean, it goes to show what the future could be, on being able to televise an ultra. um and so we would have to sit down and talk it over, like what's the best event to be in the Olympics. And I know that trail running is like really exciting, and I follow UTMB every year, but at the same time, I mean, there's a lot of logistics that are to make it kind of difficult. And yeah, I mean, it was cool to see the whole 24-hour thing because you could have cameras on the track following the event the entire time. So yeah, I don't know what the ideal event would be, but yeah, I'd love to talk it over with people, and I just love for it to try and make it happen, and plant the seed with the leaders that could make that happen. So
That's amazing. Do you yourselves? Do you see yourself, running in UTMB, Barclay, Badwater? Are any of those, in your future? Will we see you flying through those?
Oh gosh, I mean, I think about the evolution of my career, and my husband and I bought a house up in Colorado this year. And so, I had all these goals that I wanted to achieve as far as world records and that sort of thing. And, I'm 36 years old, and I'm kind of in my speed prime as an ultra runner. And so I've really just got to make the most of, while I have my speed, I've really got to focus more on the road stuff and the track stuff. But we bought a house in Colorado, and I see the evolution of my career becoming more trail running and adventure running. And I've set all these goals for myself. I mean, I won the Comrades Marathon, which is the most competitive ultra in the world, and nobody's won Comrades in UTMB. So I definitely would love to, to learn how to run more on trail and technical terrain, and when the time is right, like take on UTMB and see if I can translate my amazing, running ability and speed to the more mountainous terrain. So
it's 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 wonderful to see you, like, you obviously have this mapped out in your head, and a part of it, obviously comes from your athletic background, but also part of it comes from you just understanding how the body works because you have a bachelor's of science in exercise and sport, right? Talk to us about that, and also you worked in bone research. So, how is, of course, there's the training that's informed you. Talk about how your education has lent to how you have been planning your everything out for yourself?
Yeah, great question. So I went to grad school in from 2005 to 2007. And so that was kind of around the evolution of my running career when I was trying to become a marathoner. And I mean, I was digesting everything I was learning, taking all these bone and muscle physiology courses, and also nutrition and biochemistry stuff. And so I was, training. They were using me as a guinea pig for experiments where I mean, I had myself analyzed. And, one thing that was really interesting that I found out about myself was apparently I have a really good sense of my energy balance. So I had my diet analyzed, and looking at my energy intake versus my expenditure, I was within balance of something like 70 kilocalories, which is really, really good because for the amount of mileage that I put in, I'm basically in energy balance. Um, so they also broke it down, like, what my diet was like, and I actually consume more fat in my diet. And that was really interesting. They said that meant that I was a really good fat metabolizer, and that it was probably helping me stay healthier just because I was getting in more calories from fat. So yeah, I learned a lot of things from then that have influenced my training. I talked about how I train twice a day, every day. So I do like short runs twice a day. And I mean, that's basically from supported by the science as being the most anabolic way to train for your muscles and your bones. And so now, like, I've averaged over 100 miles per week for 12 years. And, everybody would be like, "Oh my gosh, 100 miles." You're like, "That sounds like a lot." But it's how you do it. The details are in how you do it. And yeah, and so, I just took the science knowledge that I learned back then, and I've applied it with myself. And I read a book back then called by Ron Dawes called The Self-Made Olympian. And he basically took his knowledge and just applied it, and he used his brain basically to elevate him to making the Olympic team. And I had the same vision at the time. I thought I'm going to use my brain power to get myself to the top. And yeah, and so ultra running it's very much both a science and an art. And then going into the night, I've never done that before. So I learned quite a bit from my first 24-hour experience. So
That's very interesting that you mentioned that your diet had more fat, because there is a lot of talk nowadays about how we need to increase our fat with of course there are the fat diet aspects of it as well, where people are going keto, but they are finding research is finding all these amazing benefits to having a higher healthy fat diet, and of course it keeps the brain happier. So obviously your brain is in a great place.
I would say
And
so. Yeah.
yes, it's so obviously you said that you spend 100 hours running, so that's more than a job. What is it that you do? What's a day in your life, or describe a week or a day in your life? What is
A
it
day
like?
in my life. Oh,
Other than
that's
running, try to leave running out of it and give us a picture.
okay. Yeah, I laugh because if I had a film crew with me, you guys would probably not believe it. Well, first off, I'm not a morning person, so I don't like to wake up early at all. I usually get up about 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, so I like to sleep. Um, I usually have, like, for breakfast, like a cup of coffee with sugar, a slice of toast with peanut butter and jam, a banana, and then I usually go for a shorter run at lunchtime. So yeah, well, I guess you told me not to mention the running part, but I'll just mention
But no,
anyways.
you can. I mean, it's
Yeah, yeah. So anyways, I usually go for a run and probably around noontime, and I like to run at lunchtime because I like to get the heat and the sun exposure to help with vitamin D level. And so yeah, there's definitely a health benefit
of course,
to
because you studied bone density.
I
So of course.
did. I did. And I actually, when I went back to full-time work in 2014, and I was running like early morning and late at night, and I wasn't getting a lot of sun exposure, my vitamin D level went down. And so I had to change my routine such that I started doing a shorter run at lunchtime. And then, so I do my short run at lunch, and then I usually go in to work in the afternoon. So I work as a research assistant doing bone imaging at the OU Health Science Center. So I usually work like a couple hours in the afternoon. I used to work full time, so I used to work like a 9 to 6 daily schedule for several years. But since my running has taken off the past couple years, my boss is kind of more flexible with me. So I probably work like maybe about 20 hours a week, and I spread it out like over the entire week. So like whenever I have like workout days, I usually don't go into work unless I really have to. But yeah, I work in the afternoon. I'm usually trying to hydrate and fuel really well at work. That's really important because I work in a very isolated environment. I because I'm in an animal facility, and yeah, I'm having to concentrate for long periods of time because I'm doing all this imaging work on a computer, and so it's pretty. My job is pretty mentally tedious, and I think that that actually helps to train my mind for what I do as an athlete. Um, so yeah, I'm used to concentrating for long times, and yeah, and usually so I'm trying to, do my daily job, and then I usually come home in the evening time, and I have like a cup of tea, and well, sometimes I come home and I take like a brief nap, so I might like nap for like an hour or something like that. And then I get up and I have tea with sugar, another slice of toast, and let's see, another slice of toast and some chocolate. And then I go for my second run, usually like kind of late, like 8 or 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah,
Um,
because you mentioned you like running at night.
I do. I mean, sometimes it might be after 10 o'clock, like depending on when I get going. Um, but yeah, like I usually do my second run as like a longer run, and I mean, I don't get done running until like maybe 10 o'clock or later.
Do
Um,
your husband or your dogs accompany you for any of the runs?
No, actually, I usually just run by myself, and I run with pepper spray, so I make sure that I'm like, doing all the yeah, being safe and stuff. But nighttime running is surprisingly safer than people think. Like
Because people don't expect people to go running at night.
exactly, exactly. And I usually like I mean I dress pretty modestly, and I usually have a hat on, and you're running in the dark, and people, wouldn't know that I'm like a woman usually. Well, I mean my hair like usually have like a hat on or something, but yeah, people don't expect that. So like nobody's out at night. So I don't really feel unsafe like ever. So yeah, then I mean I come back in for my run, and I might do some strength training, and then have my dinner. I mean I eat dinner, we usually eat dinner kind of late, but at the same time like I don't like to go to bed feeling hungry, so I like to have like a big meal before I go to bed because it helps me sleep better. So, but yeah, I mean, I go to bed like maybe about midnight or 1 o'clock, and then yeah, I just
And then sleep until 9. So in
yeah.
your so Taco Bell and beer don't make an appearance in your daily life.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I like the Taco Bell is like just down the street from our house, so yeah, I mean, I usually have a good lunch, and yeah, either my husband like cooks up something, or I go eat at Taco Bell or Subway.
So how
So.
did you figure out that you run really well after eating, Taco Bell? Because
Yeah, that's a great question. So going back to high school, I used to run like 3 or 4 track races, and we would usually go to Taco Bell for lunch. And I always would come back in the afternoon and felt great. Like I would go run the mile race, or I might run the 800 in the mile, and I always felt great after eating Taco Bell. So it always sat well with my stomach.
the beans gave you a lot of energy.
There you go.
Probably, yes. So, you know, everything that you've been, talking about, Camille, it becomes pretty obvious that, lead a very disciplined life, and, you know yourself, and you've been, obviously, you're introspective and you can read your own body, which also helps. And of course,
Yeah,
your educational
totally.
background, everything, everything aids you in having the running career that you do. But talk to us a little bit about the struggles. What are your biggest struggles, on and like while running, and even through life, like in training? What are
Yeah.
some of the biggest struggles you have?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so when I was a runner, so around the age of 16, I started having a lot of stress fractures. So I grew 9 inches when I was in high school, and I'm very tall. I'm pretty tall for a runner. And I grew up as a basketball player, so I got my dad's tall jeans, and I grew 9 inches in high school. And so I started having stress fractures, and I think it was just my body was very imbalanced. My bones grew faster than my muscles, and so your muscles pull on your bones, and I started having a lot of stress fractures. And around that time, also, my family, we lost our home in the May 3rd, '99 tornado. So I'm going through all these changes, all these struggles as an athlete at the same time that we lost our home and we were essentially homeless. And and so my senior year of high school, I had to come back from another stress fracture in my foot, and I ended up making all state, and I ended up getting athletic scholarship offer to the University of Tulsa. And going into my freshman year, like it was a pretty traumatic year. I continued to have stress fractures. I had a teammate that tried to commit suicide multiple times. Um, the college coaches that recruited me to Tulsa, they left Tulsa to go to a different university, and so I had a different coach that did not recruit me. And he told me right off the bat that he said, "You're not good enough to run Division 1." And that stuck with me for I think that has stuck with me my entire adult career, that, just hearing somebody tell me that you're not good enough. And I ended up I felt pressure, I felt pressure to perform, and I ended up breaking down and getting more stress fractures. And I actually had my athletic scholarship cut, and I had to fight for to get a medical hardship to be able to continue as a student at University of Tulsa. So and this all everything I'm telling you, this is over like a 2.5 year period. So I had injuries, I became homeless, I had my scholarship cut, all these things. When it rains, it pours. It was one thing after another happening to me. And around this time, the amazing thing is I met my husband. And I joked that my husband was kind of like my angel at the time. I mean, he was like my savior, to meet him, and to help me cope with everything I was going through. And I ended up becoming a recreational runner, and I helped my husband with his running career. And then, eventually the tables turned, that he ended up being the one coaching me and helping to propel me to where I am now. But But that those life lessons that I experienced at a young age, I mean, that's what's really given me the strength to be able to persevere and to overcome anything. And so, I mean, I've had other injuries, I've had other moments, like even going back to I had all this success. I had no idea I was going to become an ultra runner like I am in 2015, and it was an overwhelming amount of stress. And going into 2016, I mean, I'm working a full-time job, I'm trying to balance my running career, and I started to break down both physically and emotionally. And I had to work through a lot of personal struggles in 2016 to get to where I could focus on my running career. And yeah, and I once I was able to strike that balance, with my day job and my running, and get a lot of things sorted out professionally, I've been able to have success. So
Well, that sounds like you really did go through a really difficult, phase in your life, and it ended up being a character building experience. And I guess that's the beautiful thing we can take away from it. That, and it also gives people hope that even if you are at the lowest point of your life, something good can come from that.
absolutely. I totally believe it. I mean, I've always been the type that I feel like if you get knocked down, champions get back up. And so, I've just got to keep picking myself up over and over and over again. And even this year, I had a stress reaction in my femur, and it made me miss comrades in Western States. And I mean, I've gone the whole year, and I've missed a good majority of the year because of this injury, and I had to have like more of a long-term view training. I signed up for Desert Solstice in July, and I had to have a long-term view that, okay, I've got this big goal, it's 5 months away, I've just got to build myself back up for it. So
Well, it's so important that thank you for sharing your struggles with us, because it, other than seeing, because do seem like an absolute superhero with your abilities, but it's
thank you.
also very touching to hear your story and hear your struggles. So now that we can leave the dreary past behind us, let's look into the future. Camille, what can we expect from you coming in the coming months, years?
Yeah, I mean, it's so exciting to think about. Like, I mean, some of my biggest goals I've achieved the past 2 years, 3 years. I'm only 3 years into all this, and I've already got multiple world records. I've won comrades. And I guess as far as like where see myself going is I really want to redeem myself as a trail runner. So I've had so much success mainly as a road runner and racing on the track, but I see myself as getting into more trail running, and next year I'm committed to running Western States and Leadville, and I'd love to go for the course records there. I mean, I want to become like a legend, and to have won comrades, and and then to go on when Western States and Leadville and UTMB. I mean, these are the iconic things that you want to go for, to make yourself a legend. So yeah, I'm it's going to be really exciting. Just from a talent standpoint. I mean, I feel very appreciative of what I can do with my legs, and it's going to be fun to see if I can translate that to trail running and see how fast I can go.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the involvement of big brands in ultra marathons, in the sport, because for the longest time, ultra marathon was a very niche sport cradled by the community, and now you see some big hitters like Solomon, and because there used to be Hoka Ultra, but now even Solomon is really getting involved. How big a role do you think big brands will have, or what do you think of the involvement of big brands getting involved in the sport, and what do you think it'll do for the sport?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like I personally have an agent that helps me work with sponsors. And I definitely, me as an athlete, like I just need to be able to focus on running. Like the whole business side and all that. I mean, I've got my husband helping me manage it. I've got my agent that works with sponsors. And I'm really leaving the whole business aspect up to them so that I can focus on doing what I do best. And so I think that that's a huge thing to what I'm doing is that, I'm trying not to be swayed so much by the sponsorship side. Even I think somebody asked me if I knew how much prize money was at Desert Solstice, and I said I have no idea. I mean, I'm not influenced by the sponsors. To me, it's more important about the history that I'm making and raising the bar for myself and for other women. I care more about that. I mean, I want to be remembered, 30 years from now as, what I did and raising the bar. So yeah, I think it's great to have. I do, absolutely. I mean, that's more important to me is I want to shape I want to drive a greater competitiveness to the sport. But yeah, I mean, having sponsors is great because obviously it costs money to travel all over the world, and I got to give credit. I'm sponsored by Nike, and I'm very grateful to my agent for helping to make that possible. And Nike believes in me. Like they believe, that I am going to be the greatest of all time, and I'm not afraid to say that either. So yeah, I gotta give, credit to my own sponsors who help to cover the costs of, what I do. And yeah, and I mean, as a woman, I mean, there's been a lot of attention focused on the financial side and how women are getting a little bit shafted as far as the financial part. Um and I feel like it's very, very beneficial to have an agent, to have somebody that goes to bat for you. And I didn't want to get like shafted like a lot of women do. I wanted to be, compensated for the effort that I put into it. And so yeah, I think it's good to have an agent, and I think it's good to have more sponsors, rewarding and rewarding women and shining the light on us rather than just the men. So
It's true. Very inspiring words from an inspiring person, Camille. Fine. If you were to, if somebody is listening right now and they want to pursue a future in running, or if somebody is listening to you right now and they need to hear, something to keep them motivated. What would your parting words be for, future runners, as future runners, people who are struggling with the whole idea of doing something or achieving because they're scared? Like, how do you motivate? Give us some inspirational
yeah,
words.
great question. I just think people need to believe in themselves and they need to believe in the beauty of their dreams. I think that might be an Eleanor Roosevelt quote. Yeah, I mean, I definitely believe in the beauty of my dreams and the journey that it takes to reach your dreams. Running is a lifetime sport, and it's so beautiful where your legs can take you and striving to reach these amazing goals. I mean, it makes life worth living, to be a runner and to do amazing things. And the one thing that I love to tell people is when I'm on the starting line of a race, I tell myself to let the magic come out. And I feel like all of us have, this magic inside of us that we can transcend to reach our goals that we may have thought, weren't possible. And so yeah, I love like to focus inside and to when I run a race, it's this beautiful experience, and I smile and I love to run, and I'm out there and my body's just flying all over the place, and it's so cool, to do things that you didn't think were possible and to go, exceed your limits. So
Well, thank you so much, Camille. We at I Run for Ultra will definitely be following your career, and hopefully, we get to talk to you many times in the future, every time you shatter a world record or two.
it's awesome. Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for giving us your time, and
Yeah.
congratulations once again. What a fantastic athlete you are, and
Thank you.
we really look forward to following your career.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate it. It'll be fun to see what I do next. So.
Yes, yes, it's going to be a lot of fun for us to see you having fun as well, because you do
Yeah.
definitely look like you're enjoying yourself, which makes it even more beautiful.